Today, organizations are responding to unprecedented business challenges, which has radically changed how and where we work. Discover how ServiceNow solutions provide workflows that connect people and workplaces and deliver enterprise-wide experiences that unlock productivity, support employee journeys, and flexible ways to work from anywhere. For more insights on how ServiceNow can help unify your employee experience, scan the QR code below or click the link if you have it available. Meet Ben Brooks. Named one of HR Tech's top 100 HR tech influencers, founder and CEO of Pilot, an award-winning virtual employee development program, monthly HR executive magazine columnist's Coach's Corner, private CEO and executive coaching practice for nearly a decade, served on the board of directors for Outserve SLDN and helped repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell, leadership and management roles at Lockheed Martin, Oliver Wyman, Marsh Inc., and Marsh and McLennan Companies. Co-founded the LGBT Employee Resource Group at his management consulting firm, has resided in Manhattan for 14 years, where he's ridden out the pandemic while growing Pilot. Ben, over to you.
Thank you, Paul, and welcome everyone from around the world. We are very excited. I'm Ben Brooks, the founder and CEO of Pilot. We're going to make great use of your hour. I hope this is the best webinar you've seen in 2022, I almost said 2020. Ooh, don't want to go back there, but hope this is the best webinar that you've seen. Would love to do a quick roll call. Monique started us. She's in Baton Rouge. Preston's in Idaho. I'm here in Manhattan. I'm in New York City in the Chelsea neighborhood near the High Line, if anyone of you has ever been here. So just drop in the chat where you are in the world. If you're in the United States, Canada, or one of the other countries around the world. We've got someone from Guatemala already. Eric, that's awesome. Tennessee, Minnesota, Tampa, Kentucky, Pittsburgh, Connecticut. Another Guatemala. I've been to Guatemala a few times. What a great place. Nebraska, Idaho, Minnesota, Illinois, Maryland, Traverse City, New Jersey, Nebraska, but Chelsea next week. Okay. All right, Cheryl, if you need any tips, you let me know. Lubbock. All right. Well, as you can see, we got people from all over India. Fantastic. We're lighting up new continents as we go here. Hudson Valley. I got some colleagues there from the Pilot team as well. So as you can see, we've got people from all over the country and all over the world today. We're going to be talking about this back to basics employee experience and why it's a real smart way for HR to drive value in 2022. So thanks again to ServiceNow for sponsoring us today, as well as to HR Executive Magazine, which we've got a great relationship with and we do a bunch of fun events with. And as you'll see, we're going to use the chat a lot today. Now, at the end, we'll tell you a bit about Pilot. Everyone always wonders, what the heck is this Pilot thing? Simply put, it's a virtual employee development program. We help employers and HR departments quickly drive an instant boost of engagement and productivity with a comprehensive and pretty amazing employee development program. We work with companies all over the world and won a bunch of awards for it, big and small, a lot of small and medium-sized businesses, but also certainly the Fortune 1000s, the Nestle's, the MetLifes of the world. So excited to be with you all today. So I want to give you our agenda. 3 big problems with the employee experience. Employee experience is probably a word that if we searched your inbox, you would get thousands of emails that have been marketed to you around the idea of employee experience. But let's talk about specifically, rather than a buzzword, specifically what's going on. Secondly, what's possible in a better employee experience and the solutions that map. We're not going to just be in the negative. It's easy to go there. But then on the other side of that, what are the solutions to the biggest challenges out there? One of the coolest things that we do on webinars that Pilot's involved in is we actually leverage you all. This is one of the highest registered for webinars that HR Exec has had year to date. I think that the back to basics approach is really resonating. I met with the HR Exec publisher last week and he said, HR executives are hungry not for what's happening with robots in 20 years, but for what's happening right now, what they need to be prepared for and what they can do to avoid problems in the future. So we're going to talk about that and how we can drive impact. We're going to do all of that in an hour, and we're going to be in the chat. I got a bunch of my colleagues from Pilot on as well, so they're here to help foster the conversation, to make this an impactful event, etc. So really excited you all are here. And then now a couple quick things. If you really like something, and I'm going to, I might say something to say, who's excited for the fact that in the North America, at least it's Northern Hemisphere, it's springtime. So let's do kind of a practice round here, put a +1. That's sort of like doing one of these, or a thumbs up or a wink or something. You're excited. It is the spring in the Northern Hemisphere. And I realize we have people from all over the world. So, all right, our chat works. This is a nice way on a virtual event because, if I was in a room or an audience or on a stage, I would get to see head nods and smiles or applauses or snaps or something. But when I'm looking at my curved monitor here against my wall in my home office, I don't always get that feedback. So it's a nice two-way. And then if someone says something amazing, if I saw, Vicky just said something amazing, I can just, at Vicky, just like I'm doing right now in the chat, and say at Vicky, like I love that. So it's a way for you all to communicate two-way, right? And this is kind of a many-to-many conversation rather than just a passive thing that we just sit and watch. So let's just talk about where we are today. Work-life balance is hard for all of us. It used to be we went to work, and now often work comes to us. The world is pretty chaotic. We're sort of getting back to normal, but it's not quite what it was before. 47 million. Did you know the stat? 47. By the way, we're going to bury you with stats today because we hear from HR execs they are starved for stats that they can show executives and senior management to say, this is an issue. We've got to do something about it. This works. You're going to get so many stats. Have your smartphone ready to take some pictures of some of the slides. Those are going to be really impactful to you. The Great Resignation is now hitting HR. Put a +1 if you're noticing the Great Resignation is happening in HR right now, because HR was kind of a laggard in some of that. Yep, lots of +1s there. And I think a lot of us are realizing things aren't going, and Yolanda says burnout. Exactly. They're not going back to the way that they were. And what the employee experience has shifted. What does that mean? So now is the time. Great. Jana says +1 on burnout to Yolanda. That's great. So this is a time where we need to do something. We can't just think of business as usual. We've got labor shortages. We got disengagement. We got a lot of challenges. We got productivity challenges. And right now, HR has sort of been bailing water. Think of buckets as there's holes on the side of the ship on engagement and retention. But the drivers that are really at the heart of the employee experience are not new things. I think you'll see in some of the data, these are sort of nubby, festering problems that have existed for a long time. But now we've sort of piled on some new challenges and some new friction. So we sometimes focus on the newness of, oh, now I have to do this or figure this out or learn how to collaborate virtually, et cetera. But some of those drivers are still the same. And the expectations have really shifted, right? So think of the last 2 years. People are reevaluating their lives. A third of people that quit their jobs last summer and fall didn't even have another job. That's how sort of overworked they were. I call it kind of job bankruptcy. So what employees want out of work and how they think about it in their lives has shifted. It used to be all, work was sort of hung the moon. And, it's sort of changed. People are like, work is one of the things I do in my life. Well, as employers, we have to respond to think about how do we make it compelling? How do we compete for their attention? How do we earn their discretionary effort? And, it's toxic. When people are disengaged, negativity spreads. It's like wildfire. So if you know that, right, that you want to really worry, one bad apple, right, can ruin the bunch. And so that's why we really want to be thoughtful about this and holistic. So, again, employees are paying more attention than ever to how they feel about their job. Recruiters are reaching out to them all the time. Every article that they see when they log on the internet says, you can get a raise, you should switch your job, all these things. So it's never been more important for us to focus on these efforts. I like the comment from Cheryl. They want HR to pull elephants out of the magic hat. Absolutely. And so the first problem we're going to talk about, and actually before I jump into this slide, if any of you are in tech and understand sort of product management, like what a product manager does or a product management function or a head of product, just put a +1 in there. And the bonus is if you can describe a little bit about what that is, because what you're going to see today is a product management approach to the employee experience. So what makes tech companies very successful is product management, right? Thinking about every little nook and cranny of a thing, all of the touch points. We're going to give you some product management tools. These are very hot skills in the market. If you can talk like this in your HR circles, at conferences, communities, etc., this makes you, a real thought leader in our space. So great comments coming in. And Ted asked how much the problems are really due to bad leadership. Absolutely, right? That's a big thing, and we have a part to play in affecting that. So first of all, hybrid and virtual is problem number one. Hybrid and virtual employee experience is complex. Most of our employee experience was built around an in-person work experience. Kombucha fountains, ping pong tables, guest speakers, Friday lunch and learns, staff meetings in a conference room, celebrating a baby shower, you name it. When a virtual and a hybrid mix, and it may not be that your company does all remote work or even offers hybrid, but some of your vendors do, your customers certainly may be doing it, so it affects all of us. So there's a different experience. Think about even if you do one of these where you work at home 2 days a week and in the office 3 days a week, think about how different it is on the days you're at home versus the days when you're in the office. You have a different employee experience based upon where you are, even though you are getting paid the same and your title's the same and your job is the same. Where we work massively affects how we work, and we haven't really figured out the employee experience to support that. Some amazing, and Ted asked what happens when you automate disorganization. I mean, it's one of the big dangers of automation, right? Is that you can scale inefficiency, poor quality, disorganization. So you want to, there's a saying in technology, you often want to automate last, right? Make sure that your process and your methods are effective. Otherwise, you scale crap, frankly. So again, think about employees that have never been to your offices, that have been hired in the last 2 years, that have never gone to headquarters or never been to an internal conference or company event, never been to your training centers. Again, how do you get people to be excited about work again? Employees are like, work is a 4-letter word. Work sucks. It's fine. At least I'm getting paid more, right? Well, it's a lot harder when they're just looking through the screen of a laptop. And so we have to think very creatively. It's the product management mindset. And don't worry, we're going to get into solutions and stats and best practices, but I want to really have us understand the problem. Einstein said if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes understanding it and 5 minutes solving it. We're trying to also, it's too easy for virtual employees to shut out work. Think about closing your laptop lid. Oh, I'm done. I'm off. I'm gone. It's very different than walking through the halls of an office or down the elevator or through a parking garage or parking lot or commuting home. We kind of transition and we think about it. It's really easy to create sort of that tight boundary, and we're having less engagement as a result. And think about gig work. Employees are becoming more like gig workers, higher and higher. We think about people that drive cars for us or deliver groceries or things like that, or our food. But we're having gig work show up in marketing and legal and IT and all sorts of things, HR, recruiting. And the people are like, I am here to do some work. I don't care who it's for, as long as I get paid. Think about what that does from their sense of pride or ownership. So these are some really big, big, big challenges. Lane says it's been the opposite for us. We're working more when we're at home, scheduling meetings back-to-back, replying to messages beyond officers. Absolutely, Lane, and there's a lot of research that says that's exactly true. In 2020, when people moved to 100% remote, forcibly so, the economists showed that employees were working 2 hours more per day to achieve the same level of output or productivity. And part of what we have to figure out is in a virtual work environment, how we can have fewer meetings and work more asynchronously, but that requires more trust, better written communication, right? More transparency and clarity, all those sort of things. Now, remote employees, here's some stats. They feel 182% less engaged than workers who reported that they primarily work in person. So that's from Forbes. People that are working remote, and Pilot is a remote first company. I am not against remote. I love remote, but let me just tell you, it is absolutely a higher bar to work remote for employees, for management, and for HR. You have to be more talented to work remote than in person. And in April of this year, last month, 85% of managers now believe that teams of remote workers will be the new norm. So we know that this is where it's going. We got a lot of people that are loving it, right? Andrea says she loves it, and again, we got people all over. But it's also a thing that we're not fully ready for with training, with development, with employee experience. So that's the first problem. We're not ready for the employee experience in hybrid or remote. We've built it on an in-person, and this is frankly very, you think about technology. Think about we use a desktop and a trash can and an inbox and files and folders. These are all physical metaphors that we built into a technology interface because our brains are rooted in physicality. It's hard to think about these things outside of it. There's some great questions around the deck. It's everything. I encourage you to be like highly present for this. Minimize your Slack, your Yammer, your Teams. And we'll talk. And Preston and others will share about replays in there as well. Second problem: organizations incorrectly build a perk-based employee experience. Perking employees to death, we often call it. So they focus too much on sort of the non-core aspects of the actual real-world experience. So I want to give you an example. I thought about this today. Imagine checking into a really nice hotel. Think about a vacation you went on and you really splurged for a nice hotel. Maybe you check in, they give you a glass of champagne or some, hot towels. You go to the pool and they hand out frozen grapes in the sun on a stick. You enjoy some frozen grapes. You have a butler and he or she presses your garments every day, right? Think of those sort of things. Think of how luxe that experience is. But then think about the fact that you generally don't have hot water in the shower. They only put one towel in the bathroom for 2 or 3 of you. And your room doesn't get cleaned consistently. You have no idea if housekeeping is going to come or not. Oh, and by the way, the Wi-Fi requires you to restart your phone or your computer every 30 minutes for it to work. Think how far that champagne or those grapes go, when those are the thing, or the pressing of the garments. I don't care if I have a pressed shirt, if my Wi-Fi doesn't work and the water is cold. Does this relate to, when you think about that example in the hotel, put a +1 if you can relate to the idea of how infuriating it is to get all these special trappings as a consumer when the core is hosed. It's messed up. It's not working. +2, +1,000, right? So this is the employee experience for employees. Oh, wow, we have kombucha in the office. Oh, we get a wellness day. Oh, we get this new benefit, but I haven't had a one-on-one with my manager in ages. I don't feel included at work. I'm not clear of my expectations. There's no strategy. Communication is poor. The resources to do my job aren't present. That's no hot water. That's broken Wi-Fi. That's one towel. That's missing cleaning service. So again, the organizations tend to enact strategies to just sort of add on and cascade. Here's what we need. We're going to do this for everyone. Well, you know what? Different geographies, different lines of business, different functions, different employee segments need different things. So, a lot of employee experience, we think of sort of being in the Army. Everyone gets fatigues. Everyone goes to basic training. And it's this idea of like sameness and consistency. And we love that control from the center. But it often doesn't serve the needs of employees or managers. And executives usually are way out of touch with what happens day to day. I remember when I was in the corporate world, I was a senior vice president of HR myself. Our executives had no idea what it was like to submit an expense report, to reserve a conference room, to try to schedule a meeting, because they had high-powered executive assistants who had workarounds and all sorts of things. But the average employee, boy, they really struggle to do just the basic things. So then they'd hear things about, the fact that we've got some new snacks, and they'd say, well, yeah, it's nice to have a Kind bar or some chips or something like that, or an apple. But boy, I'd love to be able to just book a conference room without having to call IT support. Now, we often give gimmicks, glitzy perks, etc., but managers get frustrated too. Sometimes we create employees that are entitled. Remember one organization we talked to brought in food trucks, and the employees signed a petition to get different shrimp because they didn't like the shrimp in the shrimp tacos. Can you imagine, And this is where the distraction from the core of the employee experience is we're focusing on what kind of shrimp we have rather than what we're really here to do at work. The last thing is when you ignore their pain points, right? Single sign-on, employee directory that doesn't have people's phone numbers so you can call them when they're not at their desk, like their cell phones. Lack of priorities, no strategy, role models. Ted mentioned this earlier, senior execs that don't model good behavior, right? You roll out something new, sometimes people are pissed. Imagine I'm at that hotel. I just took a cold shower with my one towel, my Wi-Fi is not working, and they bring me another glass of champagne, or they say, oh, we brought you chocolate service. Here's a truffle. I don't want a truffle. I want hot water. That's the same experience our employees often bring and feel, which is you're surprised. And sometimes HR, I know, gets really frustrated. I talked to a head of HR a couple of weeks ago. She said, we roll out all these new things and then people are pissed. And then the HR person gets pissed. The employees are pissed and everyone's in this sort of like anger bowl and locked horn sort of dynamic. This is where we have to not just try to perk over our problems. Perks is Band-Aids, right? You still have that sore underneath that isn't healed. That's where we really need to go. Ted says too many perks are like rearranging the deck chairs in the Titanic. Absolutely true. So more data. 91% of C-level executives and vice presidents think their employees are happy with their perks. Again, and 31% of employees said that they weren't. So big disconnect between, in Comped, by the way, is a very cool, another fellow LGBT-owned startup and small business that gives a lot of choice to employees around perks. But, there's a disconnect. Oh, our people love this. Oh, we offer this great thing, this vendor. My friend that I golf with, their company offers this, and so we do it too. We probably all sort of heard those things. And Manuel says, understand their needs. Manuel, you are 2 steps ahead. We're going to get right to that. Thank you. Another stat, 64% of employees are disengaged in their work and workplace, and 74% of disengaged workers are looking for new employment. Yikes. 2/3 of your workforce is disengaged, and 3/4 of those folks are looking for something else. Means about 50% of your headcount potentially could be actively open. Someone gives them a 10% pay increase, they're gone. And guess what? You're hosed. So that's where we really need to focus on what we could do. Now, problem number 3. Remember problem number 1, hybrid, really, really, really tough and remote to get employee experience right if we use a physical-based paradigm. Number 2, we're perking over our problems. We're over-perking, and it's causing hostility, the hotel analogy. Number 3, right? There's too much invested in low perceived value employee experience features. Think of a product, think of an app, think of a physical device that does things that you don't care about. Think about the premium credit card you might have that offers something like, baggage delay insurance. And you think, if I ever use that, would I even know how? Would I even remember? Right? So, we had endless layers. We had kind of a perks casserole, employee experience casserole. And look, 7-layer dip I love as much as anyone else at a Super Bowl party. If you're any 7-layer dip people, put a +1 in there. But we want to think maybe a little bit differently. Now, look, we tend to, get anxious. A bunch of people quit. Engagement survey data is poor. Exit interview data is poor. So we're like, what do we do, right? We just deploy something, but we don't actually involve the employees in what Nicole says is, design thinking or human-centered design. Exactly. Nicole, Manuel, all you that are bringing this in is, like Lane asks us, even just ask, what do you need? Which is, by the way, different than what do you want, right? Those are different things. What I want is a 1-hour workday and to make $1 million a year, but what do I need in a given context? That's totally different. Now, organizations are also trying to kind of buy their way out of an employee experience that's crappy. Think about maybe a friend that's in sort of a broken relationship, romantic relationship, and one of the partners in that relationship is just like, well, here's a bracelet, or I bought you, some new, whiskey, or, we're going to go to this fancy restaurant. It doesn't really make up for the core issues. And that's a very, very, very key thing. So, again, you got to test, you have to measure, you have to refine. Good product managers know that they will always be wrong on their version 1. This is a 180 from how HR people often think. HR has been trained because of employee relations and, labor negotiations and compliance and all this to never screw up, be perfect. Well, the problem with that is either you'll never release anything new or take any risk if you try to be perfect, or you'll put so much stress on yourself, you'll never learn anything. You'll take forever to roll something out. We see HR leaders sometimes take years to roll out a program when 40% of their workforce is turned over. They're kind of missing the script. So put a version out there, but then be open for feedback. And don't get crushed if they're not in love with it right out of the bat. Remember early days of Facebook? And you remember when they changed the, you'd be on your own profile or something, and they changed the activity feed. There's petitions, bring back this, and people are all pissed about it. Now everyone is just used to activity streams, but it took some refinement and testing about how that would work for that to happen. Steve says, high time HR gets comfortable with innovation, which requires an iterative approach. That iterative approach, HR, again, typically you deploy it once. It's comp season, it's benefits enrollment, it's performance management time, it's campus recruiting time. That's a one and done or a cyclical thing rather than a continuous approach. And again, employees don't feel heard if you're just rolling out the next thing. And they're like, well, what about single sign-on? Why can't I log into the travel expense system that you send me emails constantly that I'm behind on my expense reports, but then every time I try to log in, it takes me 10 minutes on support with IT to get logged in. How about we just make that easier rather than giving me, a meditation app? And by the way, I love to meditate, so it's not a diss on meditation, but a meditation app is a glass of champagne. It's a lovely thing, but if you can't log in to do your job, that's a bigger problem. It's like cold water. So those are the three big challenges. And more data, only 16% of non-HR employees say a cool space, food, and games matter. We tend to think, oh, is this cool? It's almost like, making our kids happy on a holiday, and being good parents. But in reality, they just don't care. 58% of employees define a great employee experience as being empowered and trusted. I want to say that again. 58% of employees define a great employee experience as being empowered and trusted. I would assert, and Jenny makes a great point, who has time to use those perks? You have to, if you dig into it, Jenny, we'll talk about this, you're a step ahead as well. You find a lot of your perks have very low usage, you should slash them. You're not getting your ROI if people aren't using them. And so, if I were to have HR teams or even executive teams brainstorm what's a great employee experience, trust and empowered would probably not come up. They would think about perks and benefits and great office chairs and policies and all sorts of things. But that's the human aspect of the employment experience. And Lane says, they've done surveys and have made changes to the benefits offering to reflect employee needs. Think about people, their childcare needs look different. People's home office needs look different. And now I want to talk though about the future and what's possible. So I'm making a pivot. Join me. Grabbing the wheel. We're talking about the future. So we want an employee experience where employees feel connected, right? Deeply rooted in your organization. They have a sense of that identity and that pride and that belonging. I work here. I'm part of this team. They're proud to hand out their business card. They're proud to say who they work for. They help refer talent. They help bring in customers. They go the extra mile. They wear your company swag out to the farmer's market on a Saturday because they're so proud of where they work, right? Their needs are met. What do you need? The employee experience is designed around solving pain points. Right? Pain points are often a big part of product design. Oh, like, why do we do this? Why is this better? Why is this the next thing? Used to be hard to find an apartment to rent. Airbnb is like, oh, we'll put them all together and we'll have one-click booking and we'll have guarantees and insurance. Pain points. Airbnb recently added a Wi-Fi speed indicator. That was a pain point for me. I wouldn't book at Airbnbs because my pain point was I didn't know if the Wi-Fi was fast enough. Well, enough people, so I booked at hotels and wouldn't use their product. But now they solve that pain point through a feature, right? Employees will feel heard. I feel heard by Airbnb. And the employee experience is then delightful. Now, less is not more. Steve says, Ben is the chat OG. I'm all about y'all bringing the chat today. This is so fantastic. You think about a really refined experience. If you go to a really top tier Michelin starred restaurant, they don't overflow you with, endless buckets and baskets and things like that. It's actually very refined. Small dishes, small bites, very intentional. Some of the products that we love the most are the most simple. Think about everyone that loves Yeti, coolers and mugs. If you're a Yeti person, put a +1 if if you love Yeti. Yeti doesn't have a Wi-Fi Bluetooth enabled cooler that has a personality and tweets about its feelings when you're on the beach. Yeti just keeps things really cold or really warm, and it's really durable, and it looks pretty cool. It's mostly what people want. So less is more in a great product like that. And maybe it's Swell, or it's another great product, Corkle, if you're one of those fans of different competitors out there. No bias on cups or mugs or thermoses. So solutions. Number one, reimagine experience for virtual. You got to think about where we are now. You're going to do more remote hiring or more hybrid. If you're not doing it now, you'll have to do it in the future to be competitive. So even if you know your management team isn't there yet and they're like, we want butts and seats, we want, people in the office, I need to see if they're doing their work. Some of you probably have heard that. Just know that that management, they may not be there that long, or they eventually will go, right? And you're going to need to be prepared for the masses, which is the labor force, which is what HR is responsible for recruiting and onboarding and developing and engaging and retaining in partnership with management. So we have to create a new employee experience and start with a gap analysis, right? What are those unmet needs? How do you find out, right? Realize that where someone works changes how they work. It may be that you never thought about the idea that employees need, a light to look good on camera because they never were on camera before. Or you never thought about the fact that some of your systems don't work on VPN and you need to solve that. Or that you need to have more things on a mobile device. Or that it's harder to have direct feedback when you're virtual and you need to train and develop people, create a culture where people are comfortable doing that. You have to tap into the creativity and inspiration of your peers. We're going to ask for your feedback here in just a second. So get ready with your ideas right now. Be thinking about what are you doing or seeing at your organization or in other organizations that you know about that's working for this back to basics employee experience. We're going to source all of your ideas. We're going to package them together and we're going to email everyone after this. Everyone's ideas in one mega brain trust document. It's going to be freaking awesome. So get ready. It'll only be a function of how good you are in terms of sharing those ideas, because the great thinking here is certainly not limited to me and my team. So you want to get inspired. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Pilot, we do all sorts of fun virtual events. We hired a magician and a mentalist. We had caricatures drawn of us, almost like you'd be in Central Park and someone draws your thing. We did it virtually and we could watch the artist do it on an iPad. It was really, we did a colleague feud game. We did a virtual painting course. Steal that idea. Use that, right? Now, you also want to reallocate budgets. If there are things like perks aren't getting used, kill the contract, cut it, things you used to spend a lot of money on, reallocate a travel budget, reallocate facilities investment, and put it in somewhere else. Go and find that money. Solution number 2, get to the root of the actual day-to-day of an employee. Think about when someone comes home. They sit down, maybe they have a drink or a cup of tea, they're at dinner, their friend, their spouse, their roommate, hey, how was work today? How was work today? That's the question we get asked. Well, think about if you had kombucha from the kombucha fountain, or there was, the kettle chips or the this or the that, do you really think that that's going to be like, oh, I had a kombucha today, it's on tap? You may say that the first time you have the kombucha. I promise you'll never mention it again. But if you say, hey, my boss said I did a great job. I got really clear on some expectations. I was given useful feedback. Boy, I love working with my colleagues. That's the day-to-day. They make it so easy for me to do a great job. That's the highest compliment an HR or management team could get. Kimberly says it's all about going back to basics in terms of Maslow's hierarchy. And that's, if you don't, Maslow, food, water, shelter, get the basics before you get to self-actualization. And again, the pain points have often persisted for decades. Think about manager-employee relationships, lack of feedback. That's not a new thing. That's been around for 30, 40 years, as long as we've been measuring it or studying it. So don't avoid the persistent things. Actually see if we can address them. And again, get around the core of what people need. You have to prioritize. You may have little factions. Oh, we should do this and we should add this and we should do this. I knew a healthcare company, a large healthcare company that had wellness days. And they scheduled senior executive offsites on the wellness day. Guess what happens with an offsite? There's a bunch of the teams below that have to prepare decks and analysis and be ready to answer questions. So the entire top third of the company was working on their wellness days and everyone knew about it. It reeked of a lack of integrity. That's when you perk on top of things rather than figure out what's really going on. And check your impulse to chase the shiny object, Get back to, does this solve an identified pain point? Rather than, oh, this sounds cool. Say, okay, great, but what problem is that solving? Is this a solution looking for a problem? What is the problem we're really solving? Number two, part two, right? This is again that anthropologist, journalist, curious caseworker-like view, almost as if you were to observe someone. When I was a management consultant in the airline business, I'd watch maintenance workers. I'd follow them around, and not because I was being a jerk, I would let them know what was going on, but we'd wonder, why are maintenance workers doing so little maintenance every day? Well, I was in Indianapolis, and I found out they were walking 10 miles a day, and not because they were trying to get their steps in. It's because they were trying to find parts, find a manager, get information, get safety equipment. It made it real hard to do their job. We got them walking a half mile a day instead of 10 miles a day, and guess what? Their time on tools went up, and they were happy because mechanics actually like to maintain. So that's the anthropologist sort of view of how do we make it easier to use safety equipment, to file the paperwork properly, to input the data. If you've got data errors, you probably have an employee experience problem in front of that. So you want to be ruthless about prioritizing. Prioritization means you say no to really good ideas. HR, we often don't like a lot of conflict. We don't like to say no, but being a good product manager, you often say a different word. You say not now. Right? You want to have explicit expectations between employees and managers and candor to get those expectations codified. Most of the time, at the core of those things is unclear role clarity or expectations. Some great comments. Amy's in here, Teresa, Jenny, Kimberly, Lane, Jeanette. If you're not in the chat right now, I would check it out. And you want to invest in opportunities for both employee development that makes employees feel valued, but also relationship development. You can't just have work meetings and status meetings. You have to create opportunities for employees to connect, to get to know each other. Imagine someone who's never met their manager or shook their hand. How do you foster an environment where you can get to know that person as if you'd had a glass of wine together or taken a walk together or done something like that? And you want to push communication. A good product manager is often pushing communication to the masses. Here's what we learned. Here's what's going on. Here's what worked. Here's what we tried that didn't work. Here's what we learned, etc. Ted says, our at-home communities are being ruined by a not-so-subtle message from the executive suite that we don't want to see you do anything but work. Our community activities are crying for lack of participation. And again, that's part of the messaging, Ted, that we need to flip around and figure out, Ted, what's your part in that, right? If you're seeing that, what are you doing to get in front of that? Because we need to be in the kind of proactive mindset, right? About what do we do to say, what's the right executive modeling? How do you find the one executive of the team of 7 that gets it? How do you bring them in as a champion or sponsor? How do you have them role model and show up at the community activities? If you have low participation, it's a very important thing to figure out. Number 3, the product manager mindset, right? Solve the pain points and refine the experience. Refinement. Think about refinement. It's like polishing a stone. You're not done. You're always kind of working on it. Always making it better. Always experimenting. So rather than just go, oh, we rolled out the perk, we're done, let's go do something else, right? First, see what you got and cost it out. We hear all the time, Pilot's a very affordable solution and it totally works. We're award-winning HR product of the year. And the HR people say, we don't have budget. And I'm like, oh, you don't have any budget in your HR department? Oh, no, we have a lot of budget. We just spend it on all these things. I'm like, oh, what do you spend it on? Do you get an ROI out of that? Is it worth it? Has anyone ever looked at it? I promise you'll start looking. There are tons and tons and tons of things you're wasting money on that you should just kill. Sometimes it's even employees that you need to, thoughtfully and humanely redeploy to a different job that's more value added if they're valued talent, or humanely give them a severance and transition them out with grace and dignity. You want to figure out what you can eliminate, right? Save your budget, right? If there are things, just you do a thing that, again, maybe you do an event that just doesn't work, all these community events that aren't working, just stop doing them. and then start fresh. Think about it differently. See what that's about. Rather than just slogging and trying to demand that people come, declare it a failed experiment and start over, right? And again, if employees had budget to spend, where would they be spending? What would they be buying in their experience? Do they really want the guest speaker? Is that the thing that they want? If so, great. So, and then the other thing is to figure out, how, anything that can be enhanced or fixed. You solve a small problem like single sign-on. I did this in HR, help deploy single sign-on. People wanted to throw us a parade. I remember being in Scotland, in Glasgow, and someone in a very thick Scottish accent got up and basically called me the F word in the town hall and showed me a list in his notebook of the 50 passwords he had. And I really got the message that that was his pain point. Well, guess what? 6 months later, through a lot of slogging in IT, we got a single sign-on solved, and it transformed what we asked them to do because we heard them and we respected them. That's the product manager mindset. Couple last things. Ask for feedback. Don't be afraid to be told it's not a 10 out of 10. Create a roadmap of, what could be doing next. You say, we could do this, could make this better. Great. Prioritize those things. You can't do it all at once, and release little bits at a time. Employees may say, I got the email and I was really confused, so I just deleted it. You could be mad at the employees. Employees are so stupid, they don't read their emails. Or you could say, what could we do to get your attention next time? Should we use a GIF? Is there an image of an employee with a testimonial? Should we embed a video? Should we send you a text instead? That's being curious. And, again, we have to think about the impact of the things we do. We can be in love with the program that we built or the vendor that we brought in, but does it have the impact? Is there that perceived value? It may be that you just change your performance management system from, instead of having 5 developmental goals, to having 2. And it's just a configuration thing in the back end. Help people focus. No one can keep 5 performance management goals. Kimberly says KISS. Exactly. Give someone a compliment. Exactly. Ted says, give someone a compliment. That's one of the things we actually ask in Pilot when managers give feedback to employees. It's just developmental feedback. One of the questions is, what compliment do you want to give employees? We always focus on, how could you be better and all these things. And maybe it's like, what do I love about this person? What makes them great? And then, Elena says, be careful not to ask about things you're not willing to address. Totally. Engagement survey data says that if you ask and you don't do anything with it, you cause negative engagement compared to not asking at all. And again, think about the entirety. This isn't just your benefits programs and your training programs. This is your facilities, the hardware you give people. Young people, I know people that will not work at a place if they don't get a MacBook because they're just used to better equipment and they're not being prissy. They're graphic designers or computer programmers, and they can do better work when they have better tools. Or the facility layout doesn't support people being collaborative. It's a bunch of private offices. Or it doesn't support, people, we're going to do hot desking. Okay, great. Hoteling, great. Do you have a locker where people can leave things like their notebook or some personal belongings or other things that they might need? Some snacks, medicine they might need, feminine products, whatever it might be. That's another thing, by the way. Talk about pain points. Think about the number of tech companies you've been to. If you've ever been to their offices that have beer on tap, but there's not feminine products for free. That you have to pay $0.25 or $1 in the bathroom. That pisses me off. Like, provide, products for people to get their need met, right? To take care of an obvious need. Huge difference. Put a +1 if you're aligned with me on that one. So think about, again, everything you could possibly do, how you recognize people, right? What do you put in a town hall? What do you put on the internet? What do you put, in a newsletter? A lot of +1s. People are resonating. So thanks everybody for being supportive on that. But that's one of those things. Think about the person that makes that decision. Their facilities, they may be outsourced. No one's trying to make revenue from this, but no one's just thought, what's the cost of actually providing these? Probably very little. What message would it send to the fact that we value our female employees? A big one. Now's the time for the community-sourced employees. Community-sourced solutions. I'm saying employees all over the slide. So what we'd like to hear from you now in the chat, if you haven't put them in already, what are you doing to address a virtual employee experience or a hybrid one? What are you doing to make your employee experience compelling? What are you doing what are you removing from your experience? How are you thinking like a product manager? Lactation rooms, recognition corner on the landing page of our time and attendance system. What a great idea. Everyone has to log in. You're getting their eyeballs. It used to, at Zappos, they hung a banner for recognition in the hallway that everyone had to walk through. Same idea. Know team's favorites, strengths, etc., how they like to be rewarded. Pulse surveys, right? Lactation women's comfort. 5 languages to help. That's a great one. Fun test if you know that. I'm words of affirmation and acts of service if anyone's curious. Weekly feedback, more recognition, ramping it up. Benefits survey. Weekly pod team calls. Colleague idea sharing. People-centered onboarding. Our company's implementing onboarding for the first time ever. Onboarding is the highest ROI intervention in HR. Number 2 is employee development. Number 1 is onboarding. The first 2 weeks, you can almost predict an employee's entire performance, tenure, engagement. Post-loop process employee surveys, the opportunity for them to have someone contact them if they have a further concern. We do that with Pilot. People measure on an activity. Every single activity, we say, how satisfied were you? And we ask why. And if we get something that's a neutral or below, they get an email or a call from us every single time because we're curious what's going on. Sometimes we find out they hit the wrong button, but sometimes they're sort of blown away that we care that much. Wallet allowance to choose how their dollars are spent. Cheers for Peers recognition board. Removing the negative intonation from doing this from home, right? And keeping up morale. The beginning stages, reminding our leaders that our employees are customers. Great one. Virtual water cooler, we do that too, Jeanette. We have a Slack bot at Pilot that every Monday says, what'd you do this weekend? Post a photo. People show their families, something they cooked, something they built, home improvement, a dinner they went out to. Stay interactions, check-ins that are not work-related. Exactly. How are you doing really? Sometimes work is the only place people have to talk if something's going wrong at home or with their spouse or with their kids or in their community or it's not safe. That's sometimes if people are in a bad situation, domestic violence, you could be a lifeline just to check in. It also could be something that's great. One of our colleagues yesterday told us about her son got into an honors class for his 6th grade math. We got to celebrate with her. How wonderful. I was thrilled. We also have a parent trap Slack channel, by the way, where people can put weird things about their kids and how crazy it is to be a parent. It's one of our most popular Slack channels. Working closely with IT to solve pain points. Increase communication and language the average Joe can understand, or the average Jane. Leaders reaching out directly to employees, check in and understand their goals. Informal groups, randomizer e-cards. No more mail birthday cards when we give birthday Amazon gift cards. Investing in people's home office space, focus on emotional intelligence awareness for our leaders. Customizing the whole onboarding experience, multiple touch points for new hires at different gates and not just the first week or two. Go say hi to the employees at their workplaces, at a distribution center, just visiting, if you go and just thank people for doing their work, you shake their hand, you bring a catered lunch in, you recognize somebody, you listen to their pain points. Town halls to share goals and new hires, years of service, touch base. So I'm going to move on. I want to keep these ideas flowing because we're going to email all of these back to you. If you've got a great provider you use someone like Pilot, use Blueboard, by the way, is a custom perks thing. We mentioned Comp. There's great survey things out there, great other learning things. There's a bunch of wonderful things in the market. Put that out there. We're going to email all these ideas. By the way, if this was cool to hear from your peers, put a +1 in the chat because this for me is very energizing. I learned a lot. Again, action steps, gap analysis, run surveys, leverage your exit interview data. And if your exit interviews suck, make better ones. Google great exit interview questions. They're out there, right? Benchmark, best practice, 10 more webinars like this, and, remove HR bias from the process, right? That this is the employee's need, not just the HR's need. Instead of thinking about the handbook and what employees could happen and what are the ER implications, start with the employee, not the bad apple, but the ideal employee. Reed Hastings, the Netflix co-founder, said that they dummy-proofed his last company before Netflix, and the only people that wanted to work there were dummies. So that's why Netflix did the Culture Manifesto, and it's a very different type of company. Again, 3 biggest challenges associated with remote work are loneliness. Number 3 killer of men in the United States, loneliness. Unplugging from work, loneliness, and communication and collaboration. So a perk that offers someone, different jelly in the mail or wine or something isn't going to help with these things. If you're lonely and you drink, that gets worse. So you want to think about the human factors here. Only 70% of remote workers get regular training. Get the 30% that aren't getting anything and let them know that you offer this. Ask them to prioritize this. See what's getting in the way of them doing it. Now, back to basics, right? Craft the experience. Think about the design. Think about this holistically. Remove the crap, edit out. It's like spring cleaning, purge, edit. If you've ever cleaned your cabinets, you know how good it feels when there's less in there and you can see where everything is and you know what does what? A place for everything and everything in its place. If you ever know the 5 S's in Snake 5S methodology, it's a Japanese workplace organization methodology. It's fantastic. Now, focus on make your employees actually satisfied at work, but also as people. People having trouble with addiction, that's why you have employee assistance programs. People having mental health problems, you want to get them into your benefits programs and leverage it. You often offer it, help get them there. Ask for support. They'll say, oh, I've been meaning to find a therapist for a long time, but well, can we do it together? Can we talk about this? Can I refer you to somebody? Now, another stat, companies provide great employee experience, outperform the S&P by up to 122%. Show that to your CEO this afternoon. Take a picture of that one. Say, hey, do you want to outperform the S&P? Let's create a great employee experience. Organizations that engage employees experience 41% less absenteeism. Imagine that. You wouldn't have such a labor shortage if people showed up to work every day. You wouldn't have such a hiring pressure if people showed up to work every day. By the way, when you had a lot of absenteeism, you create disengagement for the people that did show up because they're overworked. And they got an increase in productivity. And thanks, Joseph Wall. Thank you for the lovely compliments along the way here. And just so you know, everyone, I have a terrible ear infection and a sinus infection. I just started my antibiotics yesterday, so the show must go on. But I wanted to deliver for you all because I am so passionate about this topic. So hopefully I didn't sound too congested for you all. Test, set up testing, learn, get feedback. Think if you're on the keto diet, the Atkins diet, the Mediterranean diet, you need to be on the feedback diet, right? Pull it towards you. Ask. Don't wait for someone to complain. Don't assume if you haven't heard anything, it's good. What about that was great and what could we do to make it better? Don't say, do you have any feedback? People will not tell you the truth. What's your favorite thing about that? If you could change one thing, what would it be? Use a conjoint analysis tool. Make them choose. Would you rather have this or this? People would love to have every feature in a car, but they only want to pay $30,000. You got to make some trade-offs, right? Test and optimize. Give up the toxic HR behavior of being or trying to be perfect. People hate people that are perfect. We love people's vulnerability. Make a mistake. Be wrong about a hypothesis. Drop a ball. Own it. People will be closer to you, not further from you. If you're a Brene Brown person, you'll know that to be true. She's taken 3 months off, by the way. If anyone saw, Brene Brown is like, I need a break. And it's taken, it's a bold thing. Check out her Instagram and a blog post. It's incredible. So think like a product manager. 92% of HR professionals think that enhancing the employee experience was a priority over the next 3 years. And before the pandemic, it was only 52%. So almost double the focus on this. Everyone in HR is thinking about this. This is why this is the best use of your hour today. And again, their feelings about the day-to-day at work, negative or positive, impact their productivity. Hey, honey, how was your day at work today? Impacts what you get out of that employee for their compensation. Call it ROT, return on talent. So before we adjourn, we're going to talk about the slides. We have a best practice guide. By the way, drop your LinkedIn in. If you'd love to network with people while I'm talking, put in your LinkedIn. We'll put in mine. I'll have Beth put in mine or Preston. But I want to mention quickly what Pilot is because everyone asks, because Pilot really helps create a great employee experience. It's a 6-month development employee experience. It's really focused on employees reflecting, looking inward to think about who they are, soliciting feedback rather than waiting from it from an HR system. They can ask a colleague that's maybe not always their manager. Advocating for themselves, speaking up, finding their voice for what they need rather than quitting or being nasty on Glassdoor. Imagine if people just ask for what they need. And of course, taking action. It's one thing to know something. It's another thing to do something. So, we have employees reflect digitally on their smartphones. It takes 10 minutes. We deliver on email. There's no passwords. Managers give feedback about the future, not the past. It's not tied to their compensation. We are blowing up the LinkedIn, folks. You all are killing it. Peer community, belonging, DEI, inclusion, right? We connect employees and they get to actually form friendships. Gallup says that if people have a best friend at work, they are 12 times more likely to be retained. Group coaching, we bring in coaches and we challenge employees. We say things that they would never want to hear from management or HR. When they hear it from a coach, they go, oh yeah, that's a good way to think about it. My manager is my customer. I should ask for the feedback. Oh, I guess I should talk about how I like to work. Oh, maybe that feedback isn't meant to be soul crushing. We also bring in executives to have fireside chats about, how they navigate their careers, how they find work-life integration, where they've made mistakes. Not how they're perfect and their gorgeous resumes or their big titles, but how their childhood affected how they see the world, what they wish they would have done differently. The unwritten rules of work that, depends on the family they're from or the demographics they come from, they may have never learned. And of course, the measurement and management. If you roll these things out, you got to make them sizzle. You got to get people to use them. You got to align it to your strategies. You got to have the data to go back to finance and your CEO and prove that it worked. And we do all of that wrapped around the employee. That's why we won top HR product of the year, excellence in women's leadership development, excellence in diversity and inclusion, and excellence in mentoring and coaching. So we're going to send you a resource. We have a great resource, which is a game plan, a roadmap for a back to basics employee experience. This presentation is a lot. I talk at 2x speed. I live in New York City and I've had 3 cups of coffee and I got antibiotics going through me. So what this is going to do is break it down into those challenges and those solutions on a very clear PDF. You can share with all of your colleagues. We're going to have the recording and slides if you need it. Add me on LinkedIn. Preston just put my LinkedIn right back there in the bottom of the chat. So share what you learned today. This is my challenge as a coach, right? I work with CEOs. I work with people you've seen in the newspaper this week. I work with a lot of really exceptional people. Share. That's what keeps the learning alive. Share with a colleague, a friend, a spouse, a neighbor, your kid. Kids love to know about the business world and work. You'd be surprised, right? Use the Back to Basics plan when we send that through email. That'll come through tomorrow. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Check out Pilot, right? If you put your LinkedIn in the chat, add some of these other folks. We're creating a community. We all want belonging. Loneliness sucks, right? And of course, life rewards action. Insights are great. I went to a webinar. I learned a lot. Ben was inspiring. We really had a lot of great conversation. There's a great bunch of ideas. Awesome. What are you going to do with it? Put it to work. So if you're a Dolly Parton fan like I am, talk about a great American and a great human being, right? We can't direct the wind, but we can adjust the sails. There's a lot of winds changing, right? How work works, technology, employees, the labor market, the employee experience, diversity, inclusion, flat architectures, transparency. A lot of things are changing. Globalization, gig work, right? But this is key that we can adjust our sails. That's what HR has to do. If you just do HR, how you do it in the past, a bunch of Fortune 500 HR heads are actually being let go because their boards of directors and CEOs felt they did not rise to the challenge in the pandemic as hard as they worked. And the ones that are being rewarded and getting even bigger bonuses and more equity and all these other things, bigger teams, bigger budgets, more remit, more visibility, they're the ones that adjusted the sails. We have to do things differently. That's what senior executives want and need. So everyone, I'm going to stay on. If you got any quick questions, we'll stay on for just a couple extra minutes here. Really appreciate this. Email and phone numbers here. Lynn Ann leads sales for us. She's fantastic. Beth literally helps run my entire life and is the most competent EA I've ever had and helps really run a lot of our operations here at Pilot. Preston, our marketing team, helps put all of this together and deserves a great deal of credit, as well as Audra on our marketing team and others, and my great Pilot team that was on today, Corianne and Amy and others. Thanks, everyone. Really, really lovely to connect with you. Again, we would love to help you. So if you want to make a difference, Pilot can get started in 2 weeks. It's easy, it works, and it's affordable. So Megan mentioned something about SHRM. So Megan, we're going to capture that, and we certainly would love to talk. If you've got opportunities for us to speak around the country, around the world, virtually or otherwise, we're looking to get this message out because I think this is the message of the future of HR. And it's a really, really critical one that we want everyone to get aligned around. So really excited. Our mission at Pilot is for everyone to feel powerful at work. And by everyone, we mean everybody. So hopefully today in this 1 hour, you feel powerful at work. Got any last questions? The one thing I'd love to know is, a feeling you're feeling or an insight you got as you're heading out. Think of me holding a basket at the door and you're going to put a slip of paper in the basket. What do you take away from today? It's helpful feedback for me as I got my ears all plugged up and my nose all plugged up. Just so what resonated or what's your biggest thing? That'll be kind of our last thing we do here in the next 90 seconds, and then we'll wrap up. But would love to know, any sort of takeaways that you have or any feelings you're even feeling right now. And Marcel will definitely get in contact with you as well. And it sounds like the action planning, practical insights, positive energy. Glad you all liked the presentation. I haven't gotten to even keep up. I'm going to have to reread these later. There's so many good ones. Pain points, solve for that. Yes. Follow the pain. Everyone in sales who's rich knows you got follow the pain. That's it. Feel like my team is on the right track. Lane, amazing. What a great feeling. Right? Bring that back. Tell them, hey, we're on the right track. Yolanda, energized, right? This has been the talk amongst my leadership in the company. Curb the impulse to chase shiny objects. Absolutely. Andrea, a lot of discipline and a lot of rigor. Love the creative and practical insights. Be the product manager, energized. Where employees have lost hope, the session brings hope to reinvigorate them. We can do a lot, LR. Pain points, inspirational. And Kim, the highlight sheet, you're getting it. We already have it. We've heard this from prior attendees just like you who were bold enough to say just that. So that's what you're going to get an email, the Back to Basics plan. That's the highlight sheet. We got you covered. It's beautiful. You can share it with C-suite leadership. It's ready to go. AG, thanks for coming again, being a repeat frequent flyer with us. Carmela, product manager, really enjoyed ideas and pain points. Excited to know that there are still people out there that care for the real HR. Absolutely. Employees as customers, continuous action planning, inspired, being vulnerable, eye-opening, all the way from Kenya, Africa. Amazing, Paulette. I don't know if you're in Nairobi or somewhere else. It's a country that's been long on my list to visit. I've been to a few other places in Africa, but not your beautiful country yet. We have to be creative and open to challenge the culture of our workplaces and engage employees in the process and hear from them to implement what we suggested. I'll read just a couple more. Ask and listen for employees to make change and measure. Felt the energy during the webinar for sharing the intent and being intentional about working on the topic to the fullest. Great ideas from Megan. You share presentation. Love the focus and passion. Absolutely, Laura. Love the cheat sheet and the presentation and the recording. Can always reach out to us, hello@pilot.coach. We'll take care of that. Ask employees for what they need. How simple is that, Sonia, but so profound, Love the simplicity. Yes, Catherine, the world's complex in our own. We got to have simplicity. Can't wait to watch it again when we get the recording from Dawn. Dawn, please share it. We'll have it on our website as well. Great presentation, action items, great analysis. Be agile, not perfect, Kim. That's worth getting a tattoo. Hired 40% of our staff during COVID and hybrid onboarding, and things are great. Clean house and start fresh. Onboarding is key. Thank you. It's been very informative. Can I find a metric on the onboarding ROI? I learned that from the Human Capital Institute when I got my Certified Human Capital Strategist certification, Kim. So that's where I got the number, that stat from. I'm sure there's good stats out there. Interact with other professionals. Dedicated assignment even though you aren't feeling your best. Yes. Jean, I hope I pronounced that correctly. I'm a big believer in the show must go on. So you all made time for this. We have 900 people's time for an hour. That's a year's worth of labor that went into this for your attention. we're committed that we're going to deliver, and that's how Pilot runs. That's the kind of company we run. So appreciate the acknowledgement. Elegant, simple solutions. Isn't that a nice thing? Elegant and simple together. Easy but take effort to get started. So, all right, everyone. Well, thanks for joining, and have a great Thursday. Go put these insights into action. Share with everybody and add us on LinkedIn. And check out Pilot. We'd love to give you a demo. Thanks, everybody.